Hello there, and welcome once again. I'm Udayan Mukherjee, Principal, Arya Vidyapith Motihari, and I welcome all the students of Standard 10 to yet another session of English Literature, where we will do part 3 of this chapter from the book First Flight, from the Diary of Anne Frank. Now, you remember, we've already done 2 parts earlier, right? And this is part 3. So, just for a quick recap of what we've already done, in the second part, right, we saw how Anne made her diary her best friend while hiding from the Nazis. I don't think I need to tell you once again, as to what happened. I have repeated that a number of times. So she was in hiding. You remember, she went into hiding for 2 years from 1942 to 44, and that is when she wrote her diary. She was barely 13 years of age at that time. Okay. She began with why a diary was so important to her. Right? Again, for your recapitulation, she made it clear that she was not a very open person. Okay? Open person in the sense that she could not really open up in front of people. So, she found it difficult to have a true friend. She had lots of friends, however, she did not have a true friend to whom she could really confide in. Right? To whom she could really say things that came from the bottom of her heart. That was something lacking. Therefore, she was hunting for a real friend, a true friend. And that true friend came in the form of her diary. All right. She then went on to give a fond description of her family. I told you, if you remember, in the last class, I did tell you that. She gives an account of her father, her mother, her sister, her teacher, Mrs. Cuperus, and her grandmother, to whom she was very close. Now, after this, we come to the entry. You see, this particular extract from the diary of a young girl written by Anne Frank has only one entry. All right? Since it's an extract, okay, so it has only one small entry. And the entry is dated June the 20th, 1942. All right? So this is the entry that she had made in her diary on this day about her class. Okay, she was a student, so she recalled some of the incidents that happened in her classroom, all right, and she dated the entry as June the 20th, 1942. All right, so going ahead, you see, it was all that was written was about being promoted. That was the discussion. Anne says that in the classroom, students often discussed their promotion. At the end of the year, you're promoted from one class to another. You know that? So it is all the same. Even in other countries, at the end of the session, you are promoted to the next class, and students were constantly, placing bets. They were kind of apprehensive. They were scared whether the teachers would promote them to the next class, just as you people were scared earlier, right? Now there is no matter, it doesn't matter at all to you, to the students of class 10, but earlier, just think about it. Relate to the students here, the students about whom Anne is talking about. I mean, you too would kind of be scared whether you're going to be promoted to the next class. You would talk to your friends, tell your friends about your apprehensions, about your fear, right? and you would possibly kind of discuss whether you're going to be promoted, whether you're going to be held over, right? So these were the discussions that Anne says went on among the students of her class. So Anne opens her heart to dearest Kitty. So that is how she begins her entry, as dearest Kitty. You know, that is a common feature of a diary, right? Most of you know how to write a diary. You write the date here, the date, and then you write dear diary, right? That is how you write, dear diary. So instead of dear diary, what did Anne write? She wrote dearest Kitty. Because remember, she had named her diary Kitty, right? So she writes dearest Kitty. So she opens her heart. She's very frank with her diary. Okay. So Anne describes how the entire class guessed who will get promotion and will make it to the new class. Okay? Just like most of the students, or why most? I would say all the students. Alright? In every country, in every nook and corner of the world, when you are at the end of the session, you start discussing it with your friends. Okay? No, I will get promoted. Well, I think I've done well in all the 3 semesters, in all the 3 earlier periodics and the half-yearly and so on, so I will definitely be promoted. Somebody might say, you know, I am feeling rather scared because I haven't done well in the previous exams, so I might not be promoted. So these are the discussions that go on commonly, you know. So the entire class, she says, the entire class was discussing whether the students would be promoted from one class to another, because that all depended on the teachers, because the teachers would decide whether a student was capable enough to be promoted to the next class, right? So they were all discussing that. Students used to even place bets. You know, they used to go into the betting game, all right, on who will pass and who will not. So they would place bets that I am going to pass. I can place a bet of ₹10. Somebody would say, no, I'm so sorry, I don't think I'll pass. And the other guy might say, no, of course you're going to pass. So the guy says, no, you know, if I pass, I will give you ₹10, and if I don't, then you give me ₹10. You know, so scared were the guys, the students there, you know. So that was the atmosphere in the classroom, in Anne's classroom, at the end of the session, right? So, you see how relatable. What is important here is you have to see how relatable it is to everyone, to you, to me. You know, even I've done that when I was a student, right? You might have done that maybe a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago. So, you know, it is very relatable. If you remember, I told you that the best part of the diary, of Anne's diary, is that it is very relatable. You can relate to it, you can identify with it. And therefore, that accounts for the immense popularity of the diary. Alright? Okay. So, see the humor. I told you the best part of this particular entry, as for the rest of her diary, is the humor with which she explains everything. Not something that is expected of a 13-year-old. However, that is why her diary stands apart from the other diaries. Okay? So, let's have a sample of Anne's humor. See, this is the sample. If you ask me, she says, it's put in inverted commas, because these are exactly the words from the book. If you ask me, there are so many dummies. Dummies are people, are the students who are not so intelligent. The unintelligent students, okay, who are not good at studies. So they are dummies. So she calls them dummies. She says there are so many dummies that about a quarter of the class should be kept back. What is kept back? Kept back means to be detained, not to be promoted. Not to be promoted. Okay? So she says that the class, a quarter of the class, that is 1/4 of the class, is not capable of moving over to the next class. Okay? But teachers are the most unpredictable creatures on earth. So he says, but we never know. I mean, the teachers are very unpredictable. They might detain, they might not promote a person or a student who is capable and might promote 2 others who are not capable at all. All right. So that is what she says, but with a lot of humor and very loving humor, which is not something that really hurts you. Right? With a lot of loving humor, she kind of tells you about her classmates and also about the teachers. All right? So that is the loving part, you know, the way she explains is very important here. All right. So moving on to the next page, we come to another character, the last character in this chapter. I told you yesterday that Mr. Keating is a very important character because she, that is Anne, describes him at length. Okay? Therefore, he is a very important character. Now, who was Mr. Keating? Mr. Keating was her maths teacher. And why is it important? Because, let's find out. Anne singles out her maths teacher, Mr. Keating, and says that he disliked her as she was very talkative. So you see, again, see how you relate to Anne, right? Many of you are so talkative. You keep chatting and talking and talking and talking in spite of being warned time and again. You keep talking in the class, right? So Anne admits that she was a talkative person, a very talkative student. So she says that Mr. Keating, the maths teacher, did not like her because she was very talkative. Humor spills over. Again, you see how humorously, how lovingly she describes Mr. Keating, right? And humor spills over. That is, it's full of humor in the way she describes how she was given essays on funny topics as punishment. So what did Mr. Keating do? Mr. Keating thought that she was a very talkative girl, and in spite of warnings, I mean, she would not, amend her ways, and she would not kind of be a less talkative girl. So what would Mr. Keating do? He would give Anne essays on funny topics. This is important. That he would give Anne essays on funny topics to write, and Anne would have to write, compulsorily would have to write on those topics. Alright? So, let us see now what were the topics. So again, you see, humor spills over, I told you. Let us see how humorously Anne describes the topics given by Mr. Keating. So punishment for a chatterbox. Now what is a chatterbox? Chatter is to keep talking and talking and talking. Alright? So that is chattering. Is keep on and on and on, to talk on and on and on. Alright? So chatterbox is the name given to a person who keeps talking in spite of given several warnings, who does not stop talking. All right? So such a person is called a chatterbox. Right. Now, Mr. Keating thought that Anne was a chatterbox. Okay? So, what punishment did he give Anne? Anne says that Mr. Keating gave her an essay to write titled A Chatterbox. So Mr. Keating said, all right, you're not listening to me, right? Okay, you write an essay on a chatterbox. Now that was a difficult essay. What would you possibly write about a chatterbox? Okay, so Anne also found it difficult to write, but somehow she managed to write an essay on a chatterbox. Okay, she used all her imagination. So Anne, she here is Anne used all her imagination to write the essay. However, as she could not change her habit of talking in class, but even after that punishment, she could not change her habit. So she kept talking and talking. And then she was given a second essay by Mr. Keating, and it was titled An Incorrigible Chatterbox. What is incorrigible? Incorrigible is a person who fails to reform himself. Reform is sudhar jana. Okay? So, जो सुधरता नहीं हो उसको इनकॉरिजिबल कहते हैं, कि बार बार कहने पर भी जो नहीं सुधरे उसको इनकॉरिजिबल कहा जाता है. A person who simply does not listen to you, who simply does not improve, or who does not reform himself in spite of being warned and told time and again, is called an incorrigible person. So, she was given another essay, this time an incorrigible chatterbox. See the humor in it. The first one was a chatterbox. Okay? She did not improve, so she was given an incorrigible chatterbox. That you are somebody who will never improve. So, write another essay on an incorrigible chatterbox. But the talking continued. She again wrote it. But the talking continued and continued. And then, for the third time, the punishment came along with another essay, which was quack, quack. Quack, 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 said Mistress Chatterbox. Now, who does the quack, quack, quack sounds? Yes, you're right. The ducks. The ducks do that, right? Quack, 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 quack. ये कौन करता है? Ducks करते हैं. So, she was given another essay to write, and that was quack, 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 said Mistress Chatterbox. So now she had become a Mistress Chatterbox. Okay? So this is the humor. See the humor. Very loving humor, which just makes you smile, and you relate to it. Right? You relate to it. You identify with it. There are so many. Must have been so many in your class who were told so many times, but did they improve? No, they kept on talking. So that is the humor that Anne shows in this particular account of hers. So she says that in spite of being given all kinds of punishments, in spite of writing essays time and again, she could not reform herself. All right, so what happens after that? At last, Anne writes a poem. Okay, so Anne writes a poem. See, I've given you, on purpose, I've given you these two photographs. This is just a memorial in the memory of Anne Frank and her elder sister, Margaret Frank. But this is very important, because this is the concentration camp of the Nazis where Anne was kept, where Anne was put up. All right? Okay. So, the third time, coming back to the text, The third time that she was given an essay, with the help of a class friend, Sam. So she had a friend in the class called Sam and wrote the essay in verse. You see, she was an imaginative girl, okay? And she was a very capable girl, right? With a lot of imagination, okay? With a lot of creativity. So this time she wrote the essay not in prose but in verse, which means she wrote a poem. A poem on what? On the topic, quack, 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 said Mistress Chatterbox. Alright? So that was the topic on which she wrote a poem. So in verse, the meaning of in verse means a poem. She wrote a poem on this topic. She now turned the table on Mr. Keating. To turn the table. To turn the table means to make him a person whom the joke is directed at. Okay? So if I turn the table on you, it means that Mr. Keating was trying to make a joke of Anne. So Anne wrote the poem in such a way that Mr. Keating actually became the butt of jokes. Alright? That is, the joke turned on him. Instead of the joke turning on Anne turned the joke on Mr. Keating. That is called turning the tables. Alright? Okay. So she turned the tables on Mr. Keating, and the poem that she wrote, again, you see, I've put this in inverted commas. The poem was about a mother duck and a father swan with 3 baby ducklings. So there was a mother, there was a father, and 3 small ducks called ducklings who were bitten to death. Now please remember this word, bitten. Please remember this, okay? It has come from the word bite. Bite is the word, all right? Bit is the past tense of bite, and bitten is the past participle. So this word should not be confused with this word. This is beaten. Beaten. It has come from the word kaatna. Okay? So iska matlab hai kaatna. This is beaten. Beaten is marna. So bite, it has come from the word beat, and the past tense of beat is beat. Please remember, it is not beaten. No, this is wrong. Not beaten, but beat. Only beat. Okay? So the past of beat is beat, and the past participle is beaten. Alright? So, here it has come from the word bite, yani kata. So, the father swan used to bite to death because, bite to death whom? The father swan used to bite his ducklings, his babies to death. Because, why? Because they quacked too much. So they kept on quacking and quacking and quacking, and so the father swan became irritated, गुस्साया उसको और उसको काट कर उसको मार डाला. So what is the humor in this? Please understand. What is the humor in this? The humor is that Anne is actually saying that the father swan is, yes, you're right, Mr. Keating. Okay? So she says that Mr. Keating is the father swan, and he is biting Anne to death because Anne was quacking and quacking and quacking. In other words, she was talking and talking and talking. You get it? So that was how she turned the table, or the tables, on Mr. Keating. So that is how Anne made Mr. Keating the butt of jokes. Okay? So that is the humor in her poem. Okay? And Anne was, of course, Anne was a little apprehensive. She was a little scared because Mr. Keating might not take it in the right spirit. However, Mr. Keating did take it in the right spirit, and Mr. Keating turns jovial. What is the meaning of this word jovial? Jovial means fun-loving. Fun-loving. Okay? Jovial means fun-loving. So he became fun-loving. How does he become fun-loving? Anne recalls that thankfully Mr. Keating took the joke the right way and never again punished her for talking. So Mr. Keating laughed and laughed when he read that particular poem, and he understood the message. Okay? He understood how Anne had turned the tables against him. Right? So he understood that. And he loved it. So he took it in the right spirit. वो गुस्सा उसको नहीं आया. ठीक है ना? और उसे अच्छा लगा कि किसी ने अपनी creativity दिखाया. Okay? So he loved it, and the best thing, Anne concludes, she here is Anne concludes, she tells you at the end of the account, she tells you, and that was, much to her surprise, Mr. Keating turned jovial. He turned jovial after having read that particular poem. He turned a very fun-loving person. He was not a fun-loving person. He was not at all a fun-loving person, and he turns into a fun-loving person after the incident, that is after reading the poem, and started cracking jokes very often. And there was a sudden change in Mr. Keating. He became fun-loving, and he started cracking jokes every now and then. Okay? And the entry ends with a warm and loving yours, Anne. Remember, a diary is something very informal. So just as you end an informal letter, how do you end an informal letter? By saying your loving son, your loving daughter, your loving father, mother, or whoever, or you say yours lovingly, Papa, or Dad, or Mom, or whoever. Right? So similarly, she ends it with a loving yours, Anne. So this is how the diary entry comes to an end. That's the end of the chapter. Now I've included this. It's not there in your text. But just to show you, one little thing. See what Anne has written. It's not there in this chapter, but what Anne says about life and people. She says, she has written it in her diary, that in spite of everything, remember, Anne had gone through the worst. She even had to give up her life because of the torture and bad behavior, right, of the Nazis. But what does she say? She says, in spite of everything, in spite of all that people have done to me, I still believe that people are really good at heart. तो लोगों ने मेरे साथ जो भी सलूक किया, लेकिन हम मानते हैं कि लोग बेसिकली बहुत अच्छे होते हैं, लोगों का दिल बहुत ही अच्छा होता है. See the basic humanity in her, right? She has not lost faith in humanity. That is something very, very important. Okay? So that, my dear students, is the end of the chapter. So study it well, and I'm sure you have enjoyed this chapter. Okay? So until we meet again, it's goodbye from me. Bye-bye.